Some of the most iconic megaprojects in history are also the ones that have attracted attention for all the wrong reasons. Megaprojects tend to be associated with a lot of fanfare because of their complex nature. Many of these giant projects have gone down for their crazy budgets and exceedingly long stretches of time. But there are some that stand out in history for having the greatest controversies of all time. Welcome back to Elite Projects, where you will find all the good, the bad, and the ugly history of the most outstanding megaprojects and skyscrapers around the world. Megaprojects all over the world have come up on different headlines for being ridiculously expensive, but many have also been criticized for their political and environmental implications. Here are some of the most controversial megaprojects in the world. St. Francis Dam, United States. The St. Francis Dam was located in the San Francisco Canyon around 40 miles from downtown Los Angeles and was constructed between 1924 and 1926. The purpose of the dam was to provide a reservoir for the Los Angeles-Owens River Aqueduct and become the city's main source of water, but it ended up being tainted with conspiracy from its planning phase all the way to its execution. For example, upon completion of the dam, William Mulholland, who was in charge of managing the project, inspected the dam and proclaimed it safe, only for the dam to collapse 5 days later, killing hundreds of people. Engineering experts argue that the mega project was a disaster in waiting, as Mulholland dismissed numerous reports during its construction of several cracks and leaks observed in the dam and its abutments. Mulholland was initially charged with the disaster and investigations conducted, but he was cleared of all charges regarding the dam failure, although the damage on his reputation was so bad that it ended his career. Montreal Olympic Stadium, Canada. Montreal's Big O Stadium was quickly renamed the Big O due to the building coming in at 13 times the original cost estimate. There was a manic scramble to get it finished in time for the games on July 17, 1976, with 3,000 staff working 24 hours a day in the final months. And even then, it wasn't quite finished in time. Construction workers still finishing up reportedly got in the way of the first athletes coming into the stadium for the opening ceremony. During the construction, architect Roger Talbert and Montreal's mayor Jean Drapeau, who had commissioned the stadium, faced multiple major obstacles. There were several labor strikes that wiped 30% off the available work time, a tripling of the price of structural steel to contend with, as well as corruption among officials. 3 decades later, CBC reported that the $1.5 billion debt, the equivalent of $6.8 billion in today's money, from the 1976 Summer Games had finally been cleared. To date, it still remains something of a white elephant. Hubble Space Telescope. Space. In 1990, the legendary Hubble Space Telescope was launched into orbit 353 miles above Earth. At the time, the BBC reported how the Hubble would provoke a drastic revision of the shapes, sizes, and content of galaxies, having already drastically revised its budget and deadline for launch. The Hubble took 20 years to build, which was at least 7 years longer than planned. Plus, it cost 3 times the original estimate, coming in at $1.5 billion at the time, which is the equivalent of $2.9 billion in today's money. Despite the cost, technical problems materialized even after the launch, including the malfunctioning of the solar panels that powered the telescope and flaws in the mirrors that helped produce images. On Christmas Day of 2021, NASA launched Hubble's successor, a new and improved long-distance high-resolution space telescope called the James Webb Space Telescope. However, the project had followed in its predecessor's footsteps. After being announced in 1996, it was originally set to launch in 2007 at the cost of $1 billion. The cost later mushroomed up to $8.8 billion, with its launch date rescheduled at least twice. Denver International Airport, United States. When Denver's new airport was finally complete, 16 months late in 1995, it was hailed as an economic catalyst by advocates and a legally dubious, colossal waste of money by critics. The New York Times reported that the project had cost $4.9 billion by its completion, equivalent to $8.2 billion in today's money. This made it 3 times over budget, which led to the project's own financiers filing suits. Multiple setbacks to planning and construction construction were responsible for the enormous overspends. Perhaps the single most costly failure was, ironically, the airport's key selling point: an ultra-modern, fully automated baggage system. It initially malfunctioned and shredded bags and cost more than $100 million, equivalent to $397 million today, to get into working order. Since then, the airport has been the subject of a host of conspiracy theories, from the hypothesis that markings on the airport floor are satanic symbols, to the idea that its underground bunkers might be a secret lair. Yangtze River, Three Gorges Dam, China. The Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze River, China, was first proposed in 1919 by politician Sun Yat-sen, but it wasn't until the mid-1950s that the idea was given serious attention, and due to the Chinese Civil War, building work didn't start until 1994. The largest hydroelectric power plant in the world was built by 40,000 workers over the course of 12 years. The dam was the subject of social media rumors for many years, with images circulating that showed the dam apparently at risk of collapse and cities overcome with flooding, but officials denied the claims. During its construction, the project wasn't short of critics either, damaging ecosystems and displacing 1.2 million people, as well as submerging entire villages in order to build it. Before and after pictures such as these show the dramatic change in the landscape it has caused. Plus, the project cost more than 4 times the original budget of $8.35 billion, with a reported final budget of $37.23 billion in 2009, the equivalent of $44.9 billion in today's money. Scottish Parliament Building, United Kingdom. Built to be the pride of Scotland, this project was completed in 2004, which was 3 years late, and at a total cost of £414 million, which would be £650 million in today's money, making it 10 times over budget. To add insult to injury, reports have since suggested that the building may only have a remaining estimated useful life of another 40 years or so, meaning that by 2060, it may need a massive refit. Designed by Spanish architect Enrique Morales, the project was rife with controversy. Lord Fraser of Carmely, a prominent Scottish politician, launched a public inquiry into the construction in 2004. His conclusions were that the handling of construction by everyone from consultants to contractors and members of the Scottish Parliament ought to have been better managed in order to avoid the massive costs and delays. Despite criticisms, the unusual building has attracted critical acclaim for its architecture, and it was awarded the 2005 Sterling Prize for the best building in the UK. Compostela City of Culture, Spain. During the early 2000s economic boom in Spain, the former leader of the Galicia region, Manuel Fraga, set out to build a sprawling complex of 6 buildings dedicated to showcasing Galician culture. He enlisted the help of American architect Peter Eisenman and set a budget of 129 million euros for the entire build, the equivalent of $214 million today. In 2011, when it was still only half built, it was reported that the building had already cost more than triple that, at 400 million euros. Galicia's flagship cultural project now comprises 4 large empty buildings and 2 big holes in the ground. In 2013, Spanish newspaper El País estimated that the complex would set Spanish taxpayers back at least another 170 million euros, making it simply unaffordable in a time of austerity. With the upkeep and millions more dollars hemorrhaging on unpopular exhibitions, the Galician government decided to end work, and so the project remains incomplete. Mind-blowing, isn't it? Wait till you hear about the crazy story of the next mega project. It will definitely leave your jaws dropping. As always, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel and tap the bell icon so that you never miss any of the new videos that we post. The world, Dubai. Dubbed Dubai's Ultimate Folly, the world was unveiled to much fanfare in May 2003. Work began that same year on the ambitious archipelago of 300 artificial islands off the coast of the Emirate, but came grinding to a halt in 2008 due to the global financial crisis and collapse of the Dubai property market. Investors found themselves seriously out of pocket. The owner of Great Britain Island was jailed for fraud, while Ireland's proprietor took his own life. In 2009, reports suggested several islands were sinking into the sea. Lebanon was the only developed island until construction began in 2019 on the $5 billion heart of Europe, a 6-island development that was expected to open by the end of 2020. Although work on the project has continued throughout the last 2 years, there has been no confirmation of the islands opening and welcoming visitors just yet. The majority of islands remain untouched, and doubts persist over whether the entire megaproject will ever be completed. Do you know of any controversial megaprojects in your country? Let us know in the comment section below, and as you do, click on the next video and learn all about the most innovative buildings of the last decade. And as always, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel.